Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? I see a lot of smiles, a lot of familiar faces, some new faces, some names that I recognize, but I don't see a lot of videos, so that's okay. As long as you're here, that's what counts. I'd love to know where you're watching from. So if you can put it in chat or put it in YouTube, that would be fabulous. I just like to get an idea where everybody is situated. It's always fun to see that. And is anybody completely new to my live streams? You have never been to one of my events at all. Make sure you put it in your chat because I won't be paying too much attention. Let me just see. I'm going to, okay, so the hand gestures are on. So if you know how to use those hand gestures, you can use that as well. Just let me know. I think, Lorraine, you're new tonight, it sounds like, right? Okay, so I just happened to see you raise your actual hand. Is there anybody else here? Kay, you're new here, but I know, Kay, you're not new to me because I know you. I know your name at least. We've been somehow in touch. Okay, so we've got Raleigh, North Carolina. We've got Boston, Massachusetts, California, Pismo Beach. Ooh, I love that area. Englewood, Florida, and Venice. Kay, the villages. That's why I know you. That's so funny. That's why I know your name. Let's see what else. Santa Cruz, California, Iowa. Wonderful. And on YouTube, we've got Indiana, New Mexico, Stuart, Florida, Ohio, Atlanta. Okay, you guys are from all over, and that's fabulous. Now, how many of you guys really have been playing for a while, but don't really use strategies in your game? If you don't incorporate any strategies at all yet, just let me know, because I know some of you pretty well, and I know that some of you are more advanced players. And once I'm done with the presentation, I do want to open it up for any kind of Q&A. So you're going to need to do that with your hand gesture, because that's the way I'm going to know to say, Agnes, go ahead and unmute and ask your question, because I definitely want to make sure that all of these concepts that I'm going to go over are understood really well. And I think it's now 6:33, and I will probably get people coming in the middle of this, so they're going to miss this whole intro, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Debbie Barnett, so if you are new here tonight, welcome. It's great to have you with us tonight. If you have been following me at all on Facebook or on YouTube, you know that I do bring educational content to the Mahjong community. That's really something I get a lot of joy out of doing, and sharing my love of this game to the community. Now, I want to mention a couple things before I get the slideshow started, and that is, I am pretty passionate about National Mahjong League rules. A couple of reasons. One is I've been playing since I'm in my mid-20s, and I always played one way by the National Mahjong League rules. I mean, there were changes to some of the rules, like there were futures at one time, for any of you that remember that kind of thing. But for the most part, I have adhered to the National Mahjong League rules. And I do these skill building strategy sort of workshops in person and online periodically, because I feel like the more I do them, the more people will be able to incorporate these things. And I do like to always go over in the beginning some, just to see what habits people have and what they've developed over the past years. And what I've come to understand is that a lot of people have learned this game online or on their own. And so they've picked up some, and I don't want to call them bad habits because that's not bad, but different habits, different things that weren't taken for granted years back when we were playing. And so online training has definitely changed a lot of that, in addition to the fact that there are some instructors out there that, and I'm not naming any names certainly, but may not be qualified to teach the game, but I appreciate their teaching because it makes more Mahjong players for all of us. And that's what we want to have, is more Mahjong players. The more Mahjong players, the more fun. But not being qualified, things are being taught incorrectly. Again, some of these are not a life or death situation. I would like to be able to just say, okay, no big deal. But some of the things just kind of sit funny with me because of the fact that for years and years and years, I don't want to say how old I am, we all played one way. So I will go ahead, and for those of you who joined a little late, I'm Debbie Barnett. Hello, hello. Hopefully you know me already. And I see a Naples, Florida post went up there. Mobile, Alabama, Mobile, right? Mobile, Alabama, is that how you say it? Mobile, I guess. Okay, I'm not really good with that pronunciation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get the presentation going. And again, at the end, take some notes, and that way we can talk about some of these things if you have any questions, or maybe you'll have something fabulous to share with us about some strategy that you use that works really well. Okay. All righty. Does everybody see my screen? No problem at all? Yes, just give me a thumbs up. I can't see for some reason. I'm having a hard time. Okay, good. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. You see a blank screen? Okay, that's it. Presentation is done. No, just kidding. Oh my God, where would we be without just a little bit of humor? All righty, tonight is all about skill building strategies, brought to you by MahjCon, which is my Mahjong event company, and bringing to you online and in-person events all year round, all about Mahjong. Next month, we have our MahjCon event. We are sold out, I'm excited to say. And we maybe will open up another tournament table if I get enough people on the wait list. So if you're interested in coming, please check it out at MahjCon.com or reach out to me. Love to have you come and be a part of it. All right, so the first part of this presentation, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is just about breaking old habits. I know some of you have been here before and you're probably going to have seen some of this already, but I always try and improve on things. And the first one I want to talk about is dealing out everyone's tiles. Now, it is a Mahjong League, National Mahjong League rule that everybody takes their own tiles. And if you're one of the ones that deal out your own tiles, maybe make a little note. Maybe you want to share that with me later. But everybody is supposed to deal out their own tiles in this game. And what I'm asking you guys when you're just thinking about this is just consider making small changes, maybe changing one thing. If you're here tonight and everybody you play with is missing this, it's going to be really hard to convince them otherwise. But if your friends are on tonight, oh, that's really great. All right, the next thing is pushing the wall break to the middle or all the way to the left. So where do you slide your break on the wall? Here's the break. And where do you slide it? Do you keep it here? Do you move it to the middle? Do you move it to the left? Again, it's not going to be something that's going to, you're not going to have a penalty for not doing some of these things, but this is a rule that it stays right there where it came from. And one of the great things about leaving it here, which if you explain it to, if teachers explain it to their students, it makes a lot of sense, is that you can follow the opening and always know which wall is going to get pushed out first. So if you're a newer player, this is a wonderful visual. But besides for that, the break, that's where it came from. That's where it belongs. I don't know where or why people started teaching people to move it down or move it to the middle. But if you want to talk about it after, let me know. All right, another thing is pushing the tiles out at a 45-degree angle. I do have to say, this is one thing that does get to me a bit. One of the reasons we push the wall, the break out at a 45-degree angle is so that you always know where to pick your tiles. So this will always be the place where you start picking. I do notice, and I don't have a slide about that because for me, it doesn't matter whether you do it or not. I'm fine either way. It's not a habit that I'm telling you to break, is they turn the last two tiles sideways at the bottom so that they always know where to pick from. Well, that does work sometime, except for today when I was at a Mahjong club that I run, one of the attendees picked from that part of the wall and not the right end, because actually when it got to being the last two tiles there, it's kind of hard to really know which one is the right one. So anyway, if that's the deal and that's what you do with the little tail at the end, that's fine. I have no problem. But if you push the tiles straight out, that's where I have a bit of a problem, because that's not the way it's supposed to be done. And the pusher, if you use a pusher now, some of the old time players don't use pushers. They never did for years, so they feel like, oh, we don't need to use pushers. We know how to push it out without a pusher and hide the tiles and do all that fancy stuff. But the pushers, just by virtue of pushing that pusher out, it goes to a 45-degree angle. And that's the way it should be done. Okay. Now, this is another big one that I would love for you guys to let me know at the end, whether you're still doing this. I see the most advanced players still doing this. Holding your pick from the wall, whoops, and admiring it. Okay. And what I tell my students when I'm teaching them is, you know what? The tile isn't all that pretty. You don't, well, some of them are if you spend thousands of dollars, but there's no reason to be spending time looking at it and admiring it. Just rack it. And if you are already familiar with why it is important to rack it, great. But if you're not familiar with it, it is a National Mahjong League rule, and there are consequences involved in not racking the tile, because what happens is that it allows that previous discard to be called. So if for any reason you just were holding a joker in your hand for a little bit, trying to figure out what you want to do with it, guess what's going to happen? If somebody else calls the previous discard, they're going to get that tile and you're going to have to put that joker back. So that's a good reason to pick and rack. Now, picking and racking is not a race. Nobody should be picking and quickly racking it. That doesn't give anybody a chance to think about what they're doing. And I always just say pause a beat or two or three or whatever. Just don't rush it to your rack. Just take a nice slow pick and rack. That at least gives somebody the chance to think. And we do all need that little bit of time sometimes, especially as we're getting a little bit older. Now, this is what is racking is a big thing. And another thing that has been taught incorrectly, or somebody who learned online wouldn't have a clue how to really do this. But this is no tapping or clicking on the top. No touching the tile on the side. Not even if it goes partially on there and doesn't hit it. But the proper way is just like that. That's what fully racking a tile means. If any of you learn to tap the tile on top of your rack, some people actually pick it, tap it, rack it. Some people pick it, double tap it, and discard it. And it never, ever gets to their slope part of their rack. So that's the way it's done as far as racking goes, and definitely is a rule. So we want to make sure we try and do that properly. And here's just repeating again, make sure it's fully racked. This is the only way to close the window of opportunity. No tapping or clicking. And this was new. These words, the tapping, is new to Mahjong Made Easy 2024. All righty, what's the next thing we got here? All right, this is a real challenge. And now we're getting more into a bit of strategy here, because if you're playing with spaces, then you're letting your opponents know what you're doing. So from a strategic standpoint, you don't want spaces in between your tiles, because better players are going to be able to know exactly what is going on. Taking a look at this picture here, I would be saying, oh my goodness, they are very close to Mahjong. So we need to make sure that we do not put spaces in between. And I'll show you what and here's another habit that is being done quite a bit out there, where people are putting tiles sideways in their rack. So this is something else that you don't want to do, but instead, what you can do is this. Instead of having a space, put your tiles upside down to indicate what is going on. Now, some of you might put a tile upside down if a tile that you need goes out on the table. I only put a tile upside down if I can call it, if it's ready to be called. And I also put my discards upside down. So I do not need to have any spaces. I don't want anybody knowing what's going on with my hand. So this is what you'll do instead, if you can break the habit. Now, again, it's one little thing at a time, right? All right, now this here is, again, one of those things where in the long run, it's not going to make much of a difference, but it's just hard to hear it for all of us who have been playing this game forever. And that is how we properly name the tiles. So I have a little cartoon strip here, hi, what's your name? My name is Green. Sorry, but did you mean Green Dragon? No dragon needed. My name is simply Green. Okay, then. Nice to meet you, Green. Same here. And what did you say your name is? And hopefully the red would say red. Now, knowing that he doesn't need to use the word dragon. We did simplify things here in America when we standardized the game. I should say, when the National Mahjong League standardized the game. What's easier to say? What takes less energy? Less words? Red or red dragon? Green or green dragon? Right? So for those that say soap, which is permissible, that's the one word. And that one word was sanctioned by the league at some point in the past when players said, this doesn't look like a white dragon, it looks like a little bar of soap. But again, one little habit at a time, you can take and challenge yourself to one little thing at a time. Now we have our famous, and I mean this guy, this one BM has become famous over the past several years. Oh, I keep saying several, but I'm thinking it's now about 10 years. The time goes by so quickly. But here's another little cartoon strip. Hi, what's your name? My name is Birdie Bam. And what's yours? Mine is Bam Bird. Hi, Birdie Bam and Bam Bird. I think your name is just one Bam. The third bird coming into play here. You are right. Nice to meet you, one Bam. Same here. Again, no big deal if you do call it a one Birdie Bam, a one Bam, a one damn bird, or whatever it is that you guys call it. But I just want you to know that if you're sitting and you join in a big event with players that have been playing for a long time, you know, they may not say anything to you, but they are thinking to themselves, this has got to be a new player or somebody who was taught, you know, the wrong way. No big deal, though. I'm telling you, you're not going to go to jail over this famous one Bam bird. And then here's another little cartoon about the winds. Hi, what is your name? My name is South. Sorry, but did you mean South Wind? No wind needed. My name is simply South. Nice to meet you. And you can call me just West. Nice to meet you too. And oops, that's a mistake. That should be nice to meet you too, West. I always catch something when I go do these things. But anyway, again, west wind, east wind, north wind, not the way we name our tiles here. All right, let's get into some, let's see. Okay, here's another really good one. And again, another strategy move as well. Naming a joker, same rather than joker. And it is definitely being taught to all the new players to call the tile joker when same is permissible when you discard a joker. It takes on the name of the tile of the previous discard just by virtue of saying same, although it's still a joker, so nobody can call it. But the reason you would say same instead of joker is that, look, we're all supposed to be listening and watching this game. It's all, you know, auditory and a verbal game. So we are supposed to be listening very carefully and watching the table. That's how we find somebody has named a tile wrong. But there are a lot of players that are very wrapped up in their own hand and not paying attention. So if there is one player who did not see that you discarded a joker because you said same, that's one more player that has no idea who discarded that joker when they finally see it on the table. Who knows, maybe there'll be two. I don't even care if it's a half a player. The reason I say this is because all of these things combined together make you a bit of a stronger player. So it's another thing that's good to do. Don't alert to everybody, joker, right away, everybody's going to look and they're going to be thinking, they discarded a joker. They must need a single tile or one for a pair, or maybe they're going for a singles and pairs hand or something, but it's going to alert them and give them more information than you need to give. And there's our fabulous joker tile. All right, the only pass, this is another one that's changed over the years. The only pass that gets stacked is the second left, and it's done like a pyramid. Okay, or as some say, put a hat on it. I've heard that explained both ways. I am seeing people stack every single pass, and some of them are stacking them 3 high, not just like a pyramid. The reason this became a stack on the second left is just so we know that the first Charleston, which consists of the first left across and first right across and first left, that the first Charleston is over and the second Charleston is beginning. It separates those two, and also there's 2 lefts back to back. So when you stack your second left, you'll never have to worry about somebody saying, what left are we on? Well, you'll know because it's stacked. I also recommend at least one person naming the passes. Again, I don't know about you, but I know that for me, it's getting a little tougher sometimes for me to remember what's going on. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And so I will do that even so I don't get confused. Just say first right, first across. And by the way, the names of the passes changed a little in case you didn't visit one of my previous events, but it's now first right, the first across, the first left, second left, and then the must across, which is the second across, and then last right. So they've changed things. You know, they listen to us, the National Mahjong League. They really do listen to us and make some positive changes to help us out. So that's pretty cool. All right, what's next here? Okay, blanks. Blanks are not a National Mahjong League approved rule. There are no blanks in the 152 tile set that we play with. Now, blanks are included when you buy a set for the purpose of replacing a lost or damaged tile. So you could take that blank. Let's say you broke a 6 crack or lost a 6 crack. You take your 6 crack, you take a blank tile, put it in the mail to one of a few companies that do the engraving, and you get your tile replaced. Now, again, this is not gonna, there's nothing that's gonna, you know, it's not a major thing if you do play with blanks, but it is going to be considered a table rule. My biggest concern about playing with blanks is what happens if that's how you learned, and now you go to play at a public facility or an event, and there are no blanks in the set. How is that going to affect your gameplay? That's what I ask you to consider mostly. If you switch back and forth and can do both, go for it. I mean, it's a table rule. I'd love to hear if anybody who's watching did learn that way, okay? So the other thing here is discarding in front of your own rack. That is very telling. If you're discarding tiles neatly in front of your own rack, I'm going to grab that information and I'm going to know exactly that you don't need those particular tiles. The board is open. The table is open for you to, somebody called me a flinger because I kind of slide them pretty quickly and whatever, but the table is there for you to slide your tile anywhere you want on the table, but don't leave it right in front of your own rack. Another one that I'm seeing quite a bit is lining up of discards on the table. This one I directly relate it to people having learned online and learned by playing against bots or other people on the internet and not having the in-person experience. But this looks familiar because that's the way the computer games do it. But when you're playing in person, you don't line the tiles up. One woman said to me, "Oh, we do this so it's really easy for you to see what's there." But the point of the game is that we're not supposed to be making it easier for everybody. All right, next up is not breaking the wall. This is another biggie that's coming about in the last several years. Interested to know how many of you don't break the wall. But if you're curious as to why breaking the wall is a National Mahjong League rule, no penalty if you don't break the wall. We just would consider it a table rule because it prevents cheating, just like cutting a deck of cards. Okay, so in Mahjong, let's say the dealer has set up his tiles. Now he knows he's going to be the first to take the first 4 tiles. And while he was building his wall that he's pushing out without a break, he put a couple of jokers right here nicely. I don't like to, I don't like to say people cheat. I don't like to accuse people of cheating, but some people do cheat. It's really sad. And I've seen it in action. So this prevents any weird, uncomfortable feelings from happening. All right, what do we have next? Oh, so this one, I guess this one looks like the same one I had already. Spaces between the groupings. Yeah, I'm just going to slip this. I might have copied something. Okay, so we're going to be going on to another section of this. But what I want to do is ask you this. Can you break any of these things that I have shown you? Are you going to keep your old habits, or can you possibly incorporate some new ones? And be a good example for your friends, because we do want to try and keep the game played the way it's been traditionally played as much as possible. It's just, in my opinion, the way I think it should be. All right, now we're going to talk about the Charleston a bit. The Charleston is probably the most important part of the game. That's where we get to build our hands, categories, and make magic happen so that we can then start the game and know what direction we're going in. This is sometimes challenging for newer players, but I just want to go over these and maybe give you some tips, okay? Most importantly, I'll talk about some of these things here. Where do you place your tiles when you get them in the Charleston? Some of these things take a little bit of thought and thinking and planning and just getting used to doing it. But do you take your 3 tiles that you got and sit them right on the end, or not even put them in your rack and pass them on? That is information that a good player is going to take away. They're going to be watching. I watch everything that's going on. If you're a newer player and you don't yet, you will as you get more comfortable with the game. So if I get 3 tiles in that I did not need at all, I'll take and put some of them inside, move my tiles around, and then I'll take the same 3 tiles and pass them on. I mean, I just think it makes a better game when I do that. I don't want to give any information out to my opponents. Where do others place their tiles? So if I give my first left and that player takes those tiles and immediately passes them on, well, I know that that player is not playing with those tiles. Again, it's information for me that I keep in my head. I know there's a lot of things to think about, and if you're newer, you're not going to be at that point, but eventually you're going to start being able to remember. The more comfortable you get with the game, the more you're able to take in and remember. And so this is, where do you place them? Do you pass them on without racking them? The Charleston is about consistently reassessing after every single pass that you get in. You've got to reassess because things can change drastically in this game. And most importantly, in the Charleston, leave multiple options open. I have another screen coming up with tiles and a way to practice doing this and getting better at the Charleston. But when I say leave multiple options open, you don't want to pick one hand and stick to one hand from the get-go. It's more about collecting categories in the beginning and then eventually having to decide between one category or the other. And your goal would be is that at whatever you're collecting, maybe you have 2 or 3 tiles left at the end as discards. That would be the best option possible. And I don't mean one hand. I'm saying you're collecting certain things. You could go with any like numbers. You can do a consecutive run and maybe even a Winds and Dragon hand. So that's what I'm referring to. Now, pairs should not be passed. I don't know what happened here with these sticking here, but we're going to look at the pairs. Pairs should be avoided from passing during the Charleston. There are ways to make that happen. There are definitely ways to make that happen. You just need to think about what are you going to possibly get in on a pass where that next pass you have to pass 3. So if you're on the second left, let's say, and you're afraid you're going to get in a couple of tiles, you keep that pair in your hand and you're going to get in a couple of tiles towards your hand and then you're stuck with a pair, that's how you're going to get stuck. So you just have to think about it. You're not using the pair, you can break it up and make sure that you don't get stuck with it. Again, it takes a little bit of help, but a little bit of getting used to, but really, if you give a pair, you're giving a nice gift to your opponent if they're happy to be playing with it. Or I have a situation where I was passed 2 pairs and I changed my hand entirely when I got the pairs in, and I made Mahjong. So if you're a better player, you got to be, you'll be aware that you can actually probably change up things. Not always, but avoid passing flowers. Flowers are a great gift to everybody. Lots of flower hands, pairs, kongs, and 2 quint hands. I'd say almost every year flowers are a very important tile. And if you do give a pass one in the Charleston, you're giving a gift. Now, I'll mention this, and that is, I really don't know why somebody would pass a flower in the Charleston unless they have their hand was dealt in almost beautifully, and there's one hand there and it doesn't use flowers, but that's rare. So if that happened to you, by all means, you might have to be passing the flower. I say avoid it. You may have to do it. Okay. There are times where you may have to do it. What if you got in a flower, let's say on your second left, and now you're doing a must across, and the flower is on the one of only 3 tiles that you could possibly pass. Well, then you do it because your hand is coming in so beautifully. So they are a gift. And now with Winds and Dragons, they're very popular this year. They, kind of comes and goes with Winds and Dragons as far as, how popular they are. But this year, the third hand down is one of the more popular hands on the card. And to be honest, I have thought nobody was playing Winds, and sure enough, halfway through the game, somebody calls a pung of either the East and West or North and South, and I'm like shocked because several have gone out already. But because they're pungs and they're easier to make with jokers, they're played more often. So that is one of the more popular tiles. Now, popular hands. Now, if you're going to pass Winds, try to do your best not to pass an East and West or North and South. Split it up like this, North and West and East and South, like that instead. That just helps with, not if somebody has a ton of Winds, and you won't know that necessarily, but it will help, especially if they're playing one of the hands that has just North and South or East and West. And we've got line 3 and line 5. Both of those do use just the opposite, North, South, East, and West. Now, if you're not playing Winds and Dragons, I always encourage everybody to discard them early. Other years, because the hands weren't that popular, and I knew what was going on, sometimes I could easily hold a Wind as a safe tile, but not this year at all. And the optional across, I like to talk about that. One thing for sure, if somebody has stopped the Charleston and they're saying to you, I have 1 tile or 2 tiles to pass on that optional across, just say no, thank you. Because there are times where you could have gotten in a brand new tile, but you didn't know it was brand new necessarily, and you end up giving it to the person that stopped the Charleston. Maybe the person that stopped the Charleston had to break something up, and you may be giving them back a tile that they needed or a brand new tile that they needed. So that is definitely something to to consider. And I do have some questions coming into YouTube, so we'll get to those when I'm done here. And then I have this little infographic about stopping the Charleston, because that's another really big thing. Today at my club, one of the ladies there said, oh, I'm stopping it. I was actually walking around coaching, but she was like, I'm stopping it. I'm stopping it. And I was like, oh, good. You've got one really great hand? She says, no. I said, okay, but what have I explained to you? You mean you don't have 3 tiles to pass, or maybe it's something that you don't want to pass, or maybe you're stuck with a pair that you don't want to pass? Oh, no. I have half. It's even between 2 hands. So I walked over to her and I sat with her and I explained to her that she's doing a disservice to herself by not looking at potentially 12 additional tiles in that second Charleston. If you stop it, you're not helping yourself, because the whole purpose of the Charleston is to build hands or categories, right? So when she's torn between 2 hands, I say, which one is the easier? Which one can you call more groupings already? You know, are there pungs, or do you have jokers to cover a Kong? Are you able to call several things? Pick the hand that makes the most sense and don't stop it. So, you know, you can see here, why stop it if you have a good hand? Because then you have a greater chance of winning. If you stop it, if you don't have 3 tiles to pass, and if you clearly have 1 hand to play. That's my recommendation. I think most instructors teach this, but I don't know for sure. And then continue if you have 3 tiles to pass, because it gives you an opportunity to add more tiles to your hand. If you're torn between 2 hands, choose the easier one with hope you'll get more tiles in. And that's if you're torn between 2 hands. So that really, this is my logic here, and I really stand by it. Now, if you, for instance, have, you know, at the very end, you have a flower, and I mean, not at the end, but before the second Charleston, if you have a flower in one of your tiles and you really don't want to pass a flower because you've had it in your hand the whole time, I mean, that makes sense, but it's got to make a lot of sense if you're going to stop it. All right, just a few other notes here. Continuing the Charleston, if you have 3 tiles to pass, with some of the exceptions. I just mentioned one about having the flower. If you're stuck with a pair, all of a sudden you got a tile in on your second left, and now it's a pair of something you already had in your hand. That's another really good reason, I would say, to stop it. If you get a tile towards your hand on the second left, what would you do? So let's say you have 3 tiles to pass, and you do pass them and you get a tile in. And what would you do? So let me go back here. If you get a tile in towards your hand on the second left, what you could easily do there is break up a pung, or even if you have a lot of jokers, break up something that you have multiple tiles of, and that tile is more than likely going to get discarded. Rarely does it not get discarded pretty early on. And since your hand is so well formed, you'll be able to call that tile. And that's the way to do that if you wanted to, you know, pass 3 tiles on and not stop it, which is, you know, what I would do. Never break up a pair that is needed. So you want to be able to cover and make sure that you keep your pair in place in your hand. So you would take from a pung or a Kong, depending again how many multiples you have, not a pair, and break up a tile from the pung. Okay, so moving on now. I hope again you're taking some notes if you have any more questions, but Charleston practice is pretty important, and you can do it with your tiles at home, where you just put the tiles face down and grab 14 tiles and play around with it. So taking a look at these tiles here, I want you to see how many hands you can see that you can play based on what is here in this dealt hand that you picked up. So make some notes. You could even put it in chat if you want to let me know what you would like to do. But how many hands can you keep track of right here? Or would it be just one category? I mean, it could be one thing, one category you're thinking of, but I'd like to know one category, multiple options that you would be thinking of, and you know, what would you pass in this particular case? So I'm going to look and see if I see any chat coming in, or you could save it for later. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Okay. I was just reading a couple of the things. So anybody have anything to add here? I don't see anything put in there, but that's okay. We can go on unless you, unless you need more time. But I just thought it would be cool so I could tell you what I see, and then you could tell me if you see the same thing. So I would keep all of the 3, 6, 9 here. That's number one. I would also keep, let's see, 2 categories for Bernadette, and I would pass the 1, the South, and the 6 dot. Okay. First I would keep all the BAMs and keep the 6 dot. Yep, for sure. Okay. So I would keep all this because right here, I see a potential for 3, 6, 9. I see line number 1 on the left side or right side. I see line number 2. There's a lot of things that could be happening in there and can change as the game goes along. But initially, I know I've got enough things in there that I could potentially do. Okay, now what else could we keep here? Well, we have 3 BAM, 4 BAM, 5 BAM, and 6 BAM. And that's a beautiful start of a hand. There's no gaps at all there. So that would be the strongest of the potentials, right? So we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 right there. And let's see, we also have, what was the other one? There was one more I looked at as well. 4, 5, 5, 6. No, I think that might be, oh yeah, 5, 6. I'm sorry, 4, 5, 6, 7. Although you have multiple 3s, so but you still have 4, 5, 6, 7 as well. And okay, so to me the 3, 6, 6, 9, the 3, 4, 5, 6, those are the 2 very, very strongest hands. I see somebody mention 3, 5, 7, 9. Possibly 3, 5, 7, 9, something could come in, but for me, because of the 3, 6, 9, I think being a little bit more flexible, or the 3, 4, 5, 6, pung, pung, kong, kong, I would probably be looking at that, but anything can happen. So 3, 5, 7, 9 can certainly happen with 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So South in 1 and 8 would be what I would do here. So the goal when you do this practice is to gather as many possibilities as you can and group them together, ending up with what you would get rid of. Making sure you look at those tiles and say, gee, is there anything else that I could potentially do with these tiles? I mean, I could even see 1 crack, 3 BAM, 5 BAM. That's even another one. And there's going to be pieces of things that you're going to be able to see, because that's what it takes to really get to the next level as a player. You got to know the card. You got to practice and learn and know the card. So now, oh yeah, that's right. Agnes, Flower 3, 4, 5 was another one I had written down and forgot. So thank you so much. Flowers 3, 4, and 5. So here, Agnes is always so good. She spots these things. So keep in mind, I said earlier, try not to pass flowers, right? If that's a potential hand right there, 3, 4, 5. I mean, you would not want to give up the flower because you don't know if you're going to need it yet. So we've got those to pass. All right, so you're going to identify the strength in your hand and build around multiples. So the 3s are the multiples, and that's what you're starting. That's like your base, your starting place, and you're going to work off of that. So we've got lots of, oh my God, I think we have 4 or 5 options right here. right here, we've got so many options, and that's what you want to achieve. Choose a category or categories that use most of the remaining tiles, and that support the strength of your hand. Select tiles to pass that create the most benign pass, if possible, I say. And I mean if possible, because if for some reason you had 3 tiles in one suit here and you were afraid to pass that, but everything you're keeping is important to you in building your hand, you do it. Just don't pass a pear if you can help it. Try not to pass flowers. But other than that, your goal is to build your hand first, then pass defensively. Okay, so the goal is to have 3 or 4 discards at the end. I'm happy because I have 3 and I've got lots of great options here. All right, next up, we're going to talk about this. Now we're going to get a little bit more into the nitty gritty of what happens in the different phases of the game. We've got 99 tiles after the deal. If you split it up into 3, it'll make your life a lot easier because decisions change based on where you are in the game. The begin game is the first 33 tiles, and this is approximately after the deal where you would be left. Okay, so here is the deal, and here it is pushed. I'm sorry, here is the break, and here is the top. Here are the tiles that will be used up after the deal, right here. And so your begin game is going to be the first 33 tiles, and then you're going to come to the next. So here's right here, and then the next, and then the next 33. So we'll look at the additional pictures, but basically these are the tiles that are dealt out, and now we're going to be left with 3 3/3. Beginning, middle, end. Okay, during the first third of the game, you are fast pace. You pick and discard. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to worry and look on the table. What am I throwing? You know, am I going to throw something somebody needs? Doesn't need to happen. And you're going to be very careful in this phase of calling too early. Beginners love to grab a tile just because they could make a grouping. But I ask you to consider this before you call a tile too early. How well set is your hand? Are you locking yourself into one hand where you maybe need a pair or a part of a single grouping, and you can't change out from that? That's it. You've locked yourself into one hand. Leave your possibilities open as long as you can. Takes getting used to. Calling especially early with jokers and giving up all your jokers in the beginning. Very challenging, because then if your other tiles start going out or something more important, you start getting tiles in, and then you need to call something else with a joker because tiles have gone out. You don't want to use up all your jokers. So it's all about how well formed is your hand. How many groupings can you call? Discarding, prioritize discards if you can. Now, what I talk about with prioritizing discards, I like to get tiles out that never left your rack during the Charleston. And that is another name for my fresh tile strategy, which is something that I talk about a whole lot. I sometimes beat it to death until people understand it, because I'm very passionate about it. And I think it's so important. Getting out a tile that was in your hand the entire Charleston means that nobody else saw that. There's a good chance that one of your opponents might need it. That's the reason you would get it out early. just as you would getting out any wins as well early. That's another priority. Dragons, if you're not using them, get them out early, especially soaps, because we know soaps are needed for the 2024 and the big hand, right? Fresh tiles. First bullet is under that category, but we'll talk a little bit more about this fresh tile strategy, okay? When you look at the table and you don't see a tile that's sitting on your rack, most people think, oh boy, it's not out there yet, I better hold it. And instead, they'll throw another tile that they have sitting on their rack. When in fact, what you should be doing is thinking the opposite way. Oh my God, this tile's not out there, I need to get it out. Why? Because when you get out a tile that's not on the board already and your opponent needs it and they're not ready to call it, you've just made it harder for them to make their hand. And if they do call it for an exposure, they called it for an exposure. Maybe you kind of forced them to call it too early, or that's how they play, and they made a decision that might end up hurting them later. But if you hold a tile that you're questioning, especially in this first third of the game, then you are going to prevent yourself from building your hand. I hope that makes sense, but it's really great. Now, I know I always get the one question about, well, I always thought that if you see a 3 crack and you pick another 3 crack, that's what you should get out. Well, the concept of that makes sense. It does. But there'll be plenty of time for you to run out of fresh tiles that you're discarding to then double up. So I do fresh first, then I start doubling up. It's definitely, you got a lot of time to be able to do all of that good stuff. Joker bait, I'm sure you guys have heard about that. I think Tom Sloper, I'm pretty sure he was the one who coined that term. What's nice is if you get a pair and you hold on to it until, maybe the middle of the second wall or somewhere right in there. You don't want to go too, not the second wall, but the second third of the game. You don't want to go too late. What you're hoping is that if you discard one of those pairs that you did not need, that somebody else will call it, put it up with a joker, and you get to do a joker swap. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I throw it and, somebody puts it up with 2 tiles and it's a pung with no jokers. So there's no guarantee in this game. All righty. So discards, keep an eye on what's going on, but don't worry too much about what you're discarding. But you do want to be, watching what's going on the table. Now we come into the middle game, which is these tiles right here, the next 33 tiles approximately. I probably don't have it exactly right, but that's what we got there. And in this part of the game, you're still going to pick and discard at a pretty fast pace. There is no reason to be holding up somebody's tile at this point. Now, if somebody's hand came in beautifully, they've got 3 exposures up, and you're playing with your friends and they make you pay for the whole table if you throw to 3 exposures, you might make a different decision. But if you wanted to take a chance at this juncture of the game and your hand, you still have the chance of making Mahjong, it's your prerogative. There's nothing wrong with it. You gave somebody Mahjong. It's only a game. It's not the worst thing in the world. But if you are so far from getting Mahjong and your hand is just not coming in, you're not getting the jokers, nothing's going your way, then you may want to consider breaking it up. Calling may still be too early, but by this time of the game, you hopefully will be, your hand will be forming. But when I say it may still be too early, if you're just not getting the tiles in, maybe it's just still doesn't make any sense, especially if you call and put up a joker that somebody else can exchange. A lot of little things to think about, but it's all about how well formed your hand is. And then sometimes you'll just take a chance, nothing's happening. You're like, oh, I'm going to call it. Maybe it'll change the picking. And, you know, some people say, I'm going to push this hand, maybe make it happen, but I don't know. Again, with discards, keep an eye on what's going on. A lot of decision making starts to happen during this phase of the game. A lot more is going on. People are calling, there's exposures. You got to start keeping an eye on a lot of things. By this time, you should be zeroing in on one hand. So that first, after the Charleston, those tiles there that we were left with, those three to, you know, on the right, that were all collected during the Charleston. You know, by this time, you're either in the 369 or you're in what Agnes suggested with the flower in the three, you know, the three consecutive numbers in a row or something, but you're pretty much should be zeroed in on one thing. So as you're collecting, hopefully those things will start happening. And where are you with your discards? Are you out of discards and you have to make a decision which way to go? That happens. You're out of discards. Now you've got two hands that are forming and you get in one tile. That's when you have to make a decision. Which hand makes sense? Which is easier? Which one don't you have to worry about maybe getting a pair or a single? Things like that. A lot of decision making happening in that middle game. And then the end game is another whole category in itself. And that's when things get really heated up. You're going to be picking and discarding at a much slower pace. You're going to be really watching what's going on, what's already been discarded, and that's normal. So you're going to be taking a look at what's already out there on the table, and harder decisions are going to develop. When you're calling in this part of the game, you got to really think about what you're doing with jokers. Because if you put up a grouping with jokers and the natural tiles are still available for exchange, and you're pretty aware that your opponent who has 2 exposures or maybe even 3 exposures may be able to exchange for a joker, you may want to think twice about calling and putting up that joker. But it's all about how well formed your hand is. Are you set for Mahjong? Are you only 1 tile away? Is there a great chance that you can Mahjong? Then you may do it. You just have to make a lot of assessments. So here's another, here it says assess how many natural tiles are left before you call and put up a joker. Best scenario is that there's no jokers available for exchange. This is when the most defensive and offensive play begins. And this increases as that remaining third of the wall decreases. It just gets even tougher and tougher. And when do you break up your hand? Easy. You ask yourself a couple of questions. Do I want to win? Yes. Do I have the chance of winning? Well, let me see. I've got 12 tiles left and I've got 3 picks, but I'm 4 tiles away from Mahjong. I can't win. Well, break your hand up. You've got to take a look at how many picks you have left. That's part of the decision making at this point in the game. You must think about that. So, you know, I see people calling a tile at the very, very end. They're nowhere near making Mahjong, and they put a joker up that's still available for exchange. Now, those are basic things that you should know for sure. Okay. Throughout the game, keep this in mind, or these things in mind. If not going for a jokerless hand, whenever possible, discard a natural tile in lieu of a joker. This is also something, I know some people know this, but the majority do not know this strategy. So if you get a joker in your hand and you're thinking, well, gee, you're waiting for a 6 bam here, okay? But you need a, you have the 6 crack covered, you have the 9 bam covered, and so you're going to discard this joker. Instead of discarding the joker, discard one of the 6s or one of the 9s. And this is even more powerful if you already have an exposure and somebody is even able to tell more when you discard the joker. So when you discard a joker during the game, what does it say? It says, oh boy. Well, if it's the very end of the game, it could be you're breaking your hand up. That's common, but I'm talking about during the game, the meat of the game. It's going to alert everybody to the fact that you may need a single tile or a flower. And the last thing you want is for someone to have more information than they need about what's going on in your hand. So instead of throwing the joker, you would take and discard the 6 crack and just move the joker into place. This is only if you're not going jokerless. And that's usually pretty advanced for somebody to want to take that chance and go jokerless, but sometimes people do. I hope you understand that concept because that's pretty important. All right, some more things to keep in mind. Where you place your discards, we talked about that already. Make sure you don't, put them right in front of you, get them out on the table. Remember, consecutive run is the most flexible category. It just is. You've got so many choices there, more than any other category. Hands with 2 pungs and 2 kongs are always easier to make than most because you don't need any pairs or singles, and you could use jokers with everything. And those 2 pungs and 2 kongs are in just about every category on the card, with exception of addition hands, quints, and singles and pairs. So lots of good 2 pung, 2 kong hands. Again, easiest hands to make. Discard flowers early if you're not using them, or if you want to play a little bit more advanced with a flower and have a little fun with it. You can hold the flower till no later than the middle of the middle game, especially if you end up getting 2, it's even better, where you could then discard a flower, hope somebody calls it and puts up a joker, and somebody else discards a flower, they call it, put it up with a joker, and you could use your flower for the joker exchange. Or sometimes flowers. I've seen 2 flowers put up with 2 jokers, and I've been able to exchange 2 at a time. A little bit more advanced, a little bit riskier, but fun. Always fun to try things. I said this earlier, discard wins earlier. Fresh tiles should go out early. Don't let a fresh tile become a hot tile, and that's what happens when you hold fresh tiles. Hold pairs no longer to the end of the middle game for possible joker bait. And safe tiles give a buffer in case needed in the end game. Safe tiles are another really fantastic thing to have. And those are tiles that you are pretty sure nobody else needs. If you have 3 2 dots, or well, let's not say 2 dots. I'll use something where I know there's not a single, but you have 3 dots up on your rack. And you have 3 dots in an exposure up on your rack. You pick another 3 dot. By everybody's exposures that nobody needs a 3 dot. keep that tile, don't get rid of it. I see people getting rid of these safe tiles right away because they're like, oh, it's safe, it's safe. But you need those safe tiles or buffer tiles for later on when you're still wanting to build your hand and things get tougher. Don't end up with hot tiles. You're defeating your whole purpose of being able to build your hand. All right, let's see. Now, a great place to practice and learn the card is ilovemahj.com. They have an exercise room which has a Charleston practice. So similar to what I was showing you, you could do with your own tiles at home by just picking a bunch of tiles and forming and seeing how many categories and things you can see and keep. You could do the whole Charleston practice at ilovemahj.com. Really fantastic. It's also a great place to do learn the card. There's lots of good exercises in the exercise room. I am an affiliate of theirs. I do all my live streams on their site when I'm doing my skill building Wednesdays and Siamese Sundays. So if you're interested, the link is under all of my YouTube skill building videos, or if you sign up because you want to try it, you'll get 3 weeks instead of 2. You can actually just put in the code DB. If you don't even have to use the link, you could just put that in. Basically, yeah. All righty. So if you are not a subscriber of my YouTube channel, I do so many events and I have so many after sessions recorded where people can't come to the live streams. Please support my channel by subscribing, click the bell, give a thumbs up. Connect with me through my Facebook groups if you're not already. Ask the Mahjong Teacher and MahjCon. I definitely appreciate all the support that you guys can give me. And I think that is it on that. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. And I'm going to take a look at some of the questions that came in here. Okay, we do a break. Just didn't know what it was called. Okay, somebody thought they didn't do the break and then they did. And then Janet says, can you explain clicking? So when you pick a tile from the wall, you pick it and rack it. Some people pick it like that infographic that I showed there. Instead of picking and racking, they click it on top of their rack and then discard. So that's what they think closes the window of opportunity, and it does not close the window of opportunity. So there's no such thing as tapping or clicking on a rack, period, the end. Pick and rack fully, as I showed you in those pictures. Let's see, what else did I have here? Okay, so those were those questions from there. I had a lot of suggestions on what to keep and everything. All right, if anybody has any questions, you could raise your hand with the little raise hand thing and then let me know if you wanted to go over anything that I said that maybe you were not familiar with. And I think, no, that's good there. Okay. I don't know, I keep hearing a little pop on my thing here, but it's not giving me anything. Oh, I see. Okay, Susan, go ahead and unmute.
Hey there.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can. Hi.
It's actually more of a comment and what your thoughts are with regard to passing and or discarding winds. I tend to pass or discard wind north and south before east and west because a number of hands need a single east and a single west. So I even further discriminate between the winds.
Well, that is definitely more advanced thinking. And I say kudos to you for going that extra step to thinking about that. You know, I don't know that, you know, everybody here is at that level, but that is definitely a pretty advanced strategy. And I'd say that if you're doing it, you might as well do it because it makes sense. It certainly makes sense.
Thank you. And my friend Nancy who is one of my teachers, she's attending on the YouTube. Every single thing you did at the beginning about breaking rules, we don't do any of those. And we try to get the group to follow that too. So we're big fans and we, want to follow the rules as well. So we really appreciate you continuing to, bring all of those things up. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I just, and sometimes I don't know if I'm like fighting a losing battle or not, with trying to get people to break those habits. But I just feel like every little bit I could do, maybe somebody will, make a change. But as I said earlier, if one person's here and they play with a bunch of other people, it's very difficult for one person to go back to their group and say, hey, we need to start breaking the wall, or, we can't tap anymore. Those things are challenging for people to do, but I'll just put it out there. All right. And is that it, Susan?
That's it. Thank you.
All right. And Matt, you can unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
Just a couple of comments. Susan was talking about the language and the tips you gave us at the beginning. I play duplicate bridge, and the language is super important. You're not breaking any rules by not using the right words, but you can tell a novice immediately by what language they use. So it's the same in bridge. Use the right words.
I agree 100%. You're preaching to the choir here. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could get to be a stickler because I also, when people say, draw a tile. Well, in Mahjong, we don't draw a tile. You draw a card and you pick a tile. And I even get a little bit finicky about that.
The other thing, I'm very, very new at this, and I wanted to thank you for the exercise room, and for those who use it or haven't used it yet. In the middle, it talks of the first exercise is pretty easy stuff. If you go to the defense section, you're thinking, and I know I'm a year away minimum from worrying about what my opponents are doing. But if you go to that section, those exercises are fantastic just to recognize the card, just to learn the card. Fantastic.
Yeah,
Really.
it really is. It's the, and I don't know, some people, maybe they just don't take that extra step to go ahead and, maybe they don't want to get better. I'm not really sure, but I mean, my goodness, if you have a tool, the whole thing, this card, this is it. If we don't know this card, then we're not going to be able to play this game to its fullest.
That section is just incredible. It asks you it gives you some tiles and asks you how many hands you can form with those tiles. It's a great exercise.
Yep, they really are. Well, I'm so happy you're enjoying it. Thank you. And Valerie? Valerie, you can unmute.
Got it.
Sure.
I have been playing for over 50 years. This is the first kind of basic. I've been to a couple of your meetings and have learned things, but I was shocked today at how many bad habits I had fallen into, and delighted to be reminded. The other thing I learned today that I had never heard before is the dividing the game into 3 rounds of 33. It isn't that I didn't know that, it's that I never thought of it. And it's a wonderful breaker, if you will, to decide when to throw something out and when not. we all are in that kind of situation. I don't care how good a player you are, where you have a tile and you just, I don't know. Looking on the board is excellent, but that doesn't always give you the answer. I love the idea that there were 3 sections to the
Mhm.
game. And
Well,
I mean,
thank you. I appreciate that.
sometimes you need a kick in the butt just to, you know,
Mhm.
that everything is not as clear as those of us who have played for a million years thinks. Now, the only other comment I wanted to make is when I was very active on Facebook, I noticed, and of course, when I learned, not that many people were learning.
Mhm.
But since the game has become so popular, I am flabbergasted at how many people want to change the rules.
Mhm. I
And
agree. I'm with you right there, baby.
when
I'm with you.
I teach, and I've taught a couple of groups, many of them still playing, I have said this, listen, you want to play another game, play another game. But these are the rules. This card, the rules are on the back. You want to learn how to play, this is the way you play. You don't change the rules. And the whole concept of we play a friendly game, therefore, is obnoxious.
Yeah, yeah,
We're all
yeah,
playing friendly games, I hope.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's all. That's all. I'm very
No,
happy
I
to
mean,
be here.
they're very good points. Very good points. Playing, a friendly game, does not mean not playing by the rules.
Right.
And, I kind of use a little silly analogy, but, when you were growing up, if you had a big family or if you didn't and you played with your friends, how many played Monopoly? Right? We all played, right?
Yeah.
How many times do you think your friends or your family members would let you get away with going to jail? Right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
seriously,
Absolutely.
think about it. Oh, no, we're playing a friendly game, so don't worry about it. You
Yeah.
you get a
No.
break this time.
Yeah.
Um,
Doesn't happen.
I mean, we played rules from the time we were little kids. Why it all of a sudden seems like it's such a big thing sometimes to people that they just, oh no, we play a friendly game. Oh, we never would call somebody's hand dead, something. I mean, it's silly. I mean,
Yeah.
so but thank you. Let me see if on YouTube uh okay, Bunny said thanks, very helpful information, was taught all the bad habits. Now I know, appreciate your time to help us. I mean, I'm not kidding you. I don't just put all these bad habits on there because nobody is taught them. They really are. Janice says, sometimes members of my group disagree with the rules. I figure it is better to have an agreeable game than an accurate one. Well, again, it's kind of going to that same thing that Valerie just said, is that, being a friendly group of people doesn't mean not following the rules. So, but look, if you're in a group and everybody else is doing it and you're not the majority, you kind of don't, you have 2 choices. You either deal with it or you find another group. So for me, if I was invited in to fill in one group, they had such bizarre rules that I finally just kept saying, I'm busy, I can't do it, I can't make it, until they stopped calling me. uh Thank you, Linda. I appreciate your kind words. Yeah, any more comments of any of these things that resonate? I mean, does everybody understand the fresh tile concept? That is probably, to me, I know you do, Agnes, because you've been hearing me talk about it forever, right? I'm like, I kill that thing, don't I? That's probably the one thing that's the most important thing to learn, to get your brain to think the opposite of how you normally would. So hopefully. Did you want to say something, Agnes?
I did. I taught that concept today. I was playing today with some of my students I haven't seen in 6 months because I'm a snowbird. And I was teaching them about the fresh tiles concept today. So always thinking about you.
Oh, thank you, Agnes. Yeah. Did it take a while for them to get it?
No, I think they thought it was very logical.
Oh, good, good. Yeah. 'cause
Debbie,
sometimes-
I learned the fresh tile rule 50 years ago.
Well, good. Well, it probably wasn't called fresh tile then, but
You know what? You know what? It was.
oh,
She
really?
taught us, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You know what I never heard till
Yeah.
the last 10 years? Hot wall, cold wall. I'd never heard those words before.
Oh, yeah. And see, that was people that I started when I was mid-20s, and people that I played with older people, they were already using hot and cold walls for that's been around for quite a long
I'm
time.
sure it has.
Yeah.
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 Thank you very much.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
so welcome. And thank you guys for, of course, hanging out. Let me just see if there's any more questions on Zoom here. Let's see. Can you go over all the reasons a person is dead in another Zoom program? Explain why that reason is important to the flow of the game. Yeah. Matter of fact, the next live stream I have, which will probably cover that. Let me just go into my next, is deep dive into the National Mahjong League rules. I haven't done that one in a long time. And there's so many new ones that have come out. So this is a good time to do that. So I'll make sure that I talk about the dead hand situations and why, from a strategic standpoint, why it might be good not to call somebody dead and why it might be good to call somebody dead. But we'll talk about that during that presentation for sure. I guess that's it. No more questions. Everybody's done. Beautiful. All right. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you guys soon. And until we meet again, just remember, practice, practice, practice. You can always reach me by email at debbie@mahjcon.com, mahjcon.com. I'm always around. I always get emails periodically from people. What do I do when this happens and blah, blah, blah. So feel free. I'm always here. All right, you guys. Thank you so much, and good night all.